Welcome back, true crime enthusiasts, to our first episode of True Crime Mysteries with Miss Murder. I'm your host, Miss Murder, and today we're delving into a case that has gripped the nation and left a small Australian town reeling from its impact. The case of Erin Patterson and the infamous Beef Wellington lunch is one of the most perplexing and tragic stories we've encountered, a tale of suspicion, alleged murder, and the darker sides of human nature. Today we're going to dissect every detail, uncover every clue, and explore every theory surrounding this baffling case. We'll journey through the timeline of events, delve into the backgrounds of those involved, and examine the forensic evidence that could hold the key to understand what really happened in the quiet town of Leongatha. Let's start by setting the scene. Leongatha, Victoria, nestled in the Gippsland region of Australia, is a town that seems almost idyllic, with its rolling green hills, quaint town centre, and a population that knows each other by name. Leongatha is the kind of place where nothing much ever happens. That's what makes the events of July 2023 so shocking. On the surface, Erin Patterson was just another resident of this tight-knit community, a mother, a former wife, and by most accounts an ordinary woman. But as we'll discover, the story behind Erin Patterson is anything but ordinary. Our tale begins in July of 2023, but to truly understand the complexities of this case, we need to rewind a few years. In order to truly understand the events that led up to that fateful lunch in July 2023, we need to delve deeper into the marriage of Erin and Simon Patterson, a relationship marked by tension, unresolved conflicts, and a series of events that, in hindsight, seem to have set the stage for tragedy. Erin and Simon met in their late 20s, a time in their lives where both were eager to settle down and start a family. Their courtship, by all accounts, was swift and passionate. Friends and family recall them as a couple who appeared to complement each other well. Simon, a dedicated and hard-working man, was known for his stoic nature, while Erin was seen as the more social and outgoing of the two. They quickly became inseparable, and within a year they were married in a modest ceremony attended by close family and friends. The early years of their marriage seemed idyllic. They settled into a comfortable life in Leongatha, a town that offered the quiet, peaceful existence they both craved. They welcomed 2 children into the world, and from the outside, their family appeared to be the picture of domestic bliss. But beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to show. Simon Patterson was a man with a strong sense of duty, both to his work and to his family. He was employed in a demanding job that required long hours and frequent travel, leaving Erin to manage the household and care for their children. This dynamic, which worked well at first, began to strain their relationship over time. Erin, who had once thrived in her role as a homemaker, began to feel increasingly isolated. The demands of raising 2 young children, coupled with the loneliness of Simon's frequent absences, took a toll on her mental health. Friends noticed a change in Erin. She became more withdrawn, her once vibrant personality dulled by the monotony of her daily routine. It wasn't long before Erin and Simon's differences began to surface. Simon viewed Erin's growing dissatisfaction as a temporary phase, something that could be resolved with time and patience. But Erin saw things differently. She felt trapped in a life that no longer fulfilled her, and as the years passed, her resentment towards Simon grew. The couple's arguments became more frequent and more intense. They fought over everything from Simon's long work hours to Erin's perceived lack of support from him. Money became a particularly sore point, with Erin feeling that Simon was too controlling with their finances, while Simon believed that Erin was being reckless with their savings. By 2019, the strain on their marriage had reached a breaking point. Erin and Simon began living increasingly separate lives, with Simon often retreating to work or spending time with friends, while Erin immersed herself in the lives of their children. The distance between them grew, and it wasn't long before they decided to separate. But even after their separation, the animosity between Erin and Simon did not dissipate. In fact, it seemed to intensify. The couple continued to argue over their children, finances, and the division of their assets. Erin, in particular, struggled with the idea of Simon moving on with his life, while she remained stuck in what she saw as a dead-end existence. Friends of the couple noted that Erin seemed to be increasingly erratic in her behaviour. She would frequently vent about Simon to anyone who would listen, accusing him of being unfaithful, controlling, and emotionally abusive. These accusations, however, were never substantiated, and Simon's friends painted a different picture, one of a man who was simply trying to move forward after a tumultuous marriage. The situation took a darker turn in late 2021 when Simon began to suspect that Erin might be trying to harm him. According to police reports, Simon experienced a series of mysterious illnesses, each one more severe than the last. He became convinced that Erin was poisoning him, an allegation that Erin vehemently denied. The tension between them reached a boiling point in November 2021 when Simon fell gravely ill after eating a meal prepared by Erin. He was hospitalised with severe food poisoning, and though he recovered, the incident left him deeply shaken. Simon confided in close friends that he believed Erin was trying to kill him, but without concrete evidence, there was little he could do. This pattern repeated itself over the next year. In May 2022, Simon again fell ill under suspicious circumstances, and in September 2022, he narrowly escaped death after another bout of what he believed was deliberate poisoning. Each time, Simon's suspicions grew, but Erin maintained her innocence, dismissing his accusations as paranoid delusions. The police were called in to investigate, but without solid proof, the case against Erin remained circumstantial at best. Simon's claims were difficult to verify, and the lack of definitive evidence left the authorities unable to take further action. As 2023 approached, Erin and Simon's relationship was at an all-time low. They communicated only when absolutely necessary, and even then their interactions were fraught with hostility. Erin had become increasingly isolated, with her social circle shrinking to just a few close friends. She rarely left her house, and those who knew her described her as a woman on the edge, desperate, angry, and deeply unhappy. It was against this backdrop of animosity, suspicion, and unresolved conflict that the infamous lunch took place in July 2023. A lunch that, for reasons still unclear, would end in tragedy and thrust Erin Patterson into the centre of a criminal investigation that would captivate the nation. Now let's fast forward to July 29th, 2023. It was a typical winter's day in Leongatha, cold, overcast, with a slight chill in the air. Erin Patterson had invited her former in-laws, Don and Gail Patterson, along with Gail's sister, Heather Wilkinson, and Heather's husband, Ian Wilkinson, for a lunch at her home. It was a gathering that was meant to be a peaceful family reunion, but it would soon become a scene of horror. The centrepiece of the meal was a dish as classic as it was complex, Beef Wellington. For those unfamiliar, Beef Wellington is a dish that involves wrapping a tender fillet of beef in a layer of pate and mushrooms, encasing it all in a flaky puff pastry. It's a dish that requires skill and precision to prepare, qualities that Erin Patterson seemed to possess, but what her guests didn't know was that this dish would be their last meal. Simon Patterson, who had been invited to the lunch, didn't attend. Lucky him. It's unclear why. Perhaps it was simply a scheduling conflict, or maybe he had other reasons for staying away. Regardless, Simon's absence that day would prove to be a stroke of luck. The following day, July 30th, all 4 guests were rushed to the hospital suffering from what appeared to be severe food poisoning. Vomiting, diarrhea, and excruciating abdominal pain were just the beginning. As their conditions worsened, doctors scrambled to figure out what had caused such a violent reaction, but it was too late. Within days, Gail Patterson and Heather Wilkinson had died, followed shortly by Don Patterson. Ian Wilkinson miraculously survived, though he remained in critical condition for weeks. The town of Leongatha was stunned. How could a simple family lunch end in such tragedy? And more importantly, what or who was responsible? The investigation quickly zeroed in on Erin Patterson. The food she had served was the obvious suspect, and detectives began to scrutinise every detail of that meal. What they found only deepened the mystery. Erin Patterson, in her statement to the police, claimed that the mushrooms she used in the Beef Wellington were a combination of dried mushrooms she had purchased months earlier from an Asian grocer in Melbourne and fresh mushrooms from a local supermarket in Leongatha. She couldn't remember the name of the grocer, a detail that would later become a significant point of contention. But why dried mushrooms? This choice is unusual for a dish like Beef Wellington, which typically calls for fresh mushrooms to create a rich, earthy flavour. Was this a simple culinary decision, or was there something more sinister at play? Erin's explanation raised eyebrows, but it was her next move that truly aroused suspicion. In the days following the lunch, Erin Patterson was seen disposing of a food dehydrator at a local tip. When questioned by police, she admitted to having lied about the dehydrator's existence, claiming that she had panicked and didn't want it to be discovered. But why dispose of it at all? What was she trying to hide? The dehydrator became a key piece of evidence in this case. Investigators speculated that it might have been used to dry the mushrooms, concentrating their toxins and making the dish lethally poisonous. But this theory, like so many others in this case, is shrouded in uncertainty. The dehydrator was found and recovered by police, but its role in the tragedy is still unclear. Was it an instrument of murder or merely a red herring in a case full of them? As the investigation continued, more questions arose. Erin Patterson claimed that she too had fallen ill after the lunch, experiencing symptoms similar to those of her guests. She was treated at a local hospital and later transferred to Monash Hospital in Melbourne, but her symptoms were far less severe and she recovered quickly. Why? This discrepancy has fueled speculation about whether Erin deliberately consumed a smaller portion of the poisoned meal, or if she somehow managed to avoid ingesting the lethal dose altogether. Some have suggested that at her age and her health might have made her more resilient, but others aren't so sure. Adding to the intrigue, Erin later admitted that she had fed her 2 children the same Beef Wellington the day after the lunch, though she claimed to have scraped off the mushrooms because they didn't like them. This statement raises even more questions. Did the children eat the same poisoned meal, or was Erin's story a calculated attempt to distance herself from the deaths? The police investigation into the deaths of Don, Gail and Heather has been exhaustive. Detectives have scoured every piece of evidence, every witness statement and every possible lead in an effort to determine what happened, but the case remains mired in uncertainty. Toxicologists have weighed in on the situation, noting that the toxin from death cap mushrooms, the suspected culprit, can be difficult to detect, especially if too much time has passed since the ingestion. Death cap mushrooms are among the most poisonous in the world, and their toxins can cause irreversible liver damage, leading to a painful and often fatal outcome. Dr. Michael Robertson, a renowned toxicologist, explained that the toxin from death cap mushrooms is only detectable for about 2 days after ingestion, making early sample collection crucial. If the toxin wasn't detected in the victims immediately, it would become much harder to prove that it was the cause of death. Forensic scientists are now faced with the daunting task of matching clinical samples from the victims with pathology results. The process is intricate and time-consuming, but it's the only way to confirm whether death cap mushrooms were indeed responsible for the tragedy. As the forensic investigation drags on, the public's fascination with the case has only grown. Media outlets across Australia and beyond have covered every twist and turn, speculating on Erin Patterson's guilt or innocence and debating the possible motives behind the alleged murders.
It's a tragedy what's happened.
Can you tell us about the meal that you cooked?
I'm so devastated by what's happened, by the loss of Don. Don is still in hospital, the loss of Ian and Heather and Gail. They were some of the best people that I've ever met. Gail was like...
Take your time.
Gail was the mum that I didn't have because my mum passed away 4 years ago. And Gail's never been anything but good and kind to me. And Ian and Heather were some of the best people I've ever met. They never did anything wrong to me, and I'm so devastated about what's happened.
Can you tell us
and the loss to the community and to the families and to my own children who've lost their grandmother.
Can you tell us a bit more about the lunch?
What I can tell you is that I just can't fathom what has happened. I just can't fathom what has happened. That Ian and Heather have lost their lives, and Gail has lost her life, and Don is still in hospital, and I pray that he pulls through, because my children love him.
And you must be pretty shaken up by this as well.
I'm devastated. I love them. And I can't believe that this has happened, and I'm so sorry that they have lost their lives.
How are you
I just can't believe it. Just can't believe it.
Can you tell us where the mushrooms came from?
just leave me alone now, please.
Police say you're a suspect. Do you have anything to say about
Yes,
that?
I say I didn't do anything. I love them. And I'm devastated that they're gone. And I hope with every fibre of my being that Don pulls through. That's
Where
what I
do the
have to
mushrooms
say.
come from? Were they picked by you, or where did they come from, Erin? Can you tell us? What meal did you cook them? Did you eat the same meal, Erin?
One theory that has gained traction is that Erin Patterson may have been motivated by money. Could she have been trying to gain financially from the deaths of her former in-laws? Another possibility is that she was driven by revenge, perhaps for perceived wrongs committed by Simon or his family. Or was this a crime of opportunity, a chance to rid herself of those she saw as obstacles in her life? But there's another darker possibility that cannot be ignored. What if Erin Patterson is innocent? What if the deaths of Don, Gail and Heather were a tragic accident, a result of a simple mistake in the kitchen that had devastating consequences? Leave a comment below. Let me know your thoughts on that. The courtroom has become the stage for this unfolding drama. Erin Patterson's trial is set to be one of the most watched in recent history, with the nation hanging on every word, every piece of evidence, and every twist in the case. Patterson has pleaded not guilty to the charges of murder, maintaining her innocence and insisting that she never intended to harm anyone. Her defence team has suggested that the deaths were a tragic accident, the result of misidentifying a poisonous mushroom as edible. They argued that Erin was simply a victim of circumstance, caught in a nightmarish situation that she couldn't control. The prosecution, on the other hand, is building a case that paints Erin Patterson as a calculating and cold-blooded killer, someone who used her knowledge of cooking to craft a meal that would end the lives of those she wanted out of the picture. As the trial continues next month, the stakes couldn't be higher. For the families of the victims, justice is paramount. They want answers. They want to know what happened to their loved one, and they want someone to be held accountable. But this case is far from clear-cut. With every new piece of evidence, every witness testimony and every expert opinion, the truth seems to slip further out of reach. Was this a case of premeditated murder or a tragic accident? And if it was murder, what drove Erin Patterson to commit such a heinous act? These are the questions that will be debated in the courtroom, and ultimately it will be up to a jury to decide Erin Patterson's fate. But whatever the outcome, the story of the Beef Wellington murders will remain etched in the public consciousness, a chilling reminder of how quickly life can be shattered by the actions of one person. The Erin Patterson case is a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the thin line between the mundane and the macabre. It's a tale that challenges our understanding of trust, family, and the lengths to which people will go to achieve their ends. As we wait for the final verdict, one thing is certain: this case will leave a lasting mark on all those who have followed it. The quest for justice for Don, Gail and Heather and Ian continues, and the search for the truth behind this tragedy is far from over. Stay tuned for more updates when this case goes back to court. And so we conclude today's deep dive into the tragic and mysterious case of Erin Patterson and the Beef Wellington murders. As always, I encourage you to keep asking questions, keep digging deeper, and remember that sometimes the truth is hidden in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. Maybe soon. Until next time, my friends, stay curious, stay vigilant, and remember, every shadow holds a story waiting to be uncovered.